Hey, what's going on, everyone? So, just doing an audio check. Hope you guys can hear me. Looks like everything is working okay here. So first, I guess I'll cover some housekeeping issues while we wait for other people to get in here. So you may have noticed there's probably been a few less videos than I normally make. Normally, I make about 15 videos a month, roughly 13 to 15 videos. And I think I've only made one video in March so far. So I just wanted to explain what's been going on. So essentially, I've been trying to test my 3090. So I've had to download a lot of games to do it. So Microsoft Flight Simulator, that took forever. That took me like 5 days to download. And it's pretty annoying, actually. They have this installation, its own installation is not part of Microsoft Store, and it uses up CPU and GPU resources, which is kind of dumb for an installation thing. But anyway, essentially it takes forever to download stuff, and it took me 5 days to download 50 gigs. I don't know what's going on, but it's pretty annoying. Skyrim is also taking a long time. I probably could pay the money to actually buy the premium subscription on Nexus Mods. But essentially Skyrim is also taking a long time to download all of the mods. I wanted to test out the RTX 3090, so that's why I downloaded Microsoft Flight Simulator. And that's just the update as well for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And for Skyrim, I'm trying to get as many mods as I can so I can fill up the VRAM on the Skyrim so I can test out the memory before I actually go and make that other video that I've been wanting to make, which is actually testing the 3090, putting some fans on it, putting the heat sinks on it, making that video. So I thought I would do all of the default stuff first. So I think, so that's why it's been taking me a long time. And second of all, I haven't been making videos late at night for a while because it's just too much of a nuisance and too much of a hassle to my family for me to make videos when I come home at like 7 or 8 o'clock after work at night. So trying to put the kids into the bed, and then I'm trying to make videos as well. It just doesn't go. So, and then by the time they're in bed, sometimes it's like 10 o'clock, and yeah, it's too much of a hassle and a bit of a stress to make videos. But hopefully I can get a few more videos out after this round of 3090 testing, after I do that video about the fans and the heat sinks, and then I will try and get more news videos out. I haven't really seen that much news that has compelled me to instantly run off to my computer to make. And that's mostly because there's not that much hardware at the moment, or hardware rumor leaks. So I think that's kind of good as well. So just taking a little bit of a break for the time being while I can. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to talk about in today's video. And as you know, you can use this as like a podcast if you wanted to. So if you want to come back to it, I'll leave the stream up and you can use this as a podcast. You don't have to look at the screen while you watch this. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about a lot of gaming news that's been happening during the week. So we have Valheim and we have Super Nintendo World. We're going to be talking about Elite Dangerous and the new expansion. We're going to talk about how Microsoft essentially is confirming that at least some of their Bethesda games will be exclusive to Xbox and PC, and how that's all going to play out. We're going to talk about the Nintendo Switch Pro rumors that have been going about in the last week or so. And I actually made a video ages ago when nobody was actually watching this channel. So it kind of goes back to some of that material, which is good because nobody watched it, right? So we're going to be talking about Nintendo Switch Pro. And during this week, there's a lot of talk about gaming cryptos or NFTs. Essentially what that is like a piece of digital art that you put a blockchain or use cryptocurrency methods to protect the ownership of that piece of art so that it's unique. So a lot of interesting debate about whether, we should be having NFTs because they could be sucking up a lot of energy. Let's talk about that. I think that's really interesting. Also, and then we're going to touch on MSI, and they've been promoting their crypto mining laptops. So I think that's pretty funny. So let's get into that as well. And finally, we're going to talk about the 11700K review controversy. So Anantech brought out an 11700K review way ahead of schedule because the CPU isn't even supposed to be out until March the 30th. So I think there was a little bit of saltiness from other reviewers who didn't do the same thing and get a CPU. We're going to talk about that. That's pretty interesting. All right, so let's go right ahead and talk about the first article, which is Valheim. Now, if you don't know what Valheim is, it recently launched on Steam, and surprisingly, and early access as well, I might add, surprisingly jumped straight to the top of the Steam top sellers chart, and it's been there for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And so Eurogamer has an article about this. Valheim sold 4 million copies in the last 3 weeks. And Irongate aims to complete next biome by the end of the year. Valheim just can't seem to stop reaching massive milestones, as after achieving a peak of 500,000 Steam users, it's now sold over 4 million copies and has only been out for 3 weeks. And just remember, Forza Horizon 4 also came out and couldn't even place higher than Valheim, and I would say that's a way bigger game than Valheim. But then, okay, sure, it's already been out on Microsoft Store, so maybe everybody who's bought it already is not buying it again on Steam. But there's some interesting quotes here. The early access survival game made by a team of 5 people at Irongate Studio hit the 4 million mark earlier today, with the dev team once again thanking the player base for their support. I don't think I really have had time to contemplate it, said Irongate CEO Richard Svensson. I know that players like the game a lot, but at the same time, I think that I can make something even better in the future. I'm looking forward to adding more content to the game, especially working on the remaining biomes. Our current roadmap only reaches the next biome, and we hope to have it done by the end of the year, but it might very well take longer depending on how smooth the development will be. I really don't want to stress the development that never ends well. Okay, so here's some stats for you for Valheim. The game reached 2 million copies sold on 15th of February, and then 3 million on the 19th. On 22nd of February, it reached 500,000 concurrent players, putting it up there with PUBG, CSGO, Dota 2, and Cyberpunk 2077 as one of only 5 games to ever reach a peak of 500,000 players on Steam. Yeah, so it's huge. It's huge. It's PUBG level, it's CSGO level, Dota 2 level, and Cyberpunk 2077. Even though it I don't know how many people are still playing that right now and how big it is, but that would have been pretty big at the time if it made top 5 of all time. Especially when you consider it's also out on good old games or good GOG Galaxy on CD Projekt Red's own retail store. So I think the first thing is why is it such a big thing, or why is it such a big game? Why did it have so much success? Well, I think if you actually look at the game, and let me just try and play this video so you can just see. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, cool. That worked. But I'll leave the audio off so I can talk through it. But essentially, it has so many elements of other games, which is why I think it's done really well. It literally thought about mishmashing pretty much every popular game that was out there. You see, you've got base building elements like Fortnite, you've got crafting elements, you've got survival elements, and I think the biggest reason is really that it doesn't take a significant or highly intensive, it's not very highly intensive in terms of GPU resources. So you can play this with a mid-tier card from about 4 years ago. So the minimum requirements, I think, is a GTX 960, and then the recommended specs are GTX 1060. And the other thing is that it only takes 1 gigabyte of storage space, 1 gigabyte of storage space for this game. Oh, and the other thing is that it's procedurally generated world as well. So, you know, it's taking up all of these elements from all these popular games like No Man's Sky, Fortnite, Rust, survival games that have been just all over Steam. And obviously Assassin's Creed Valhalla, because it's got this Nordic theme. So I think that's why it's been so popular. It's been able to get all these different groups of people to come in and get interested in the game. Pretty sure this game will probably have dragons as well. So, and you know, the other thing is that people love these sort of historical takes. So that's another reason why that people are begging for like a new Elder Scrolls. So I think that's another reason why it's popular. And as you can see, the graphics are good. The graphics are good for a mid-tier game. And I think that's why it has success, because there's so many people out there with mid-tier cards right now who cannot upgrade to the latest GPU to go and play Cyberpunk 2077. So if this is the new popular thing, then yeah, it's just going to take off, because there's probably so many people out there who can't get a new GPU. You can do funny things like that. But I'll just turn off this video now and go back to the article. So I think that's why it's been having a lot of success, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see if it can hold that, if it can get to the level of, say, like a Fortnite to try and pull users away from other games. This could be on the level of, say, like a Fortnite or a CSGO. Okay, so I want to talk about Super Nintendo World, because I just wanted to sneak in talking about Japan for a little while. And I love Japan. It's probably my favorite country. And I've been there 3 times, and going to Super Nintendo World would definitely be something that I would do once all of these restrictions and lockdowns have ended. Obviously, it's not something that I will just drag the kids out of school to go and see, but like, you know, it would be something that we'd say, hey, let's go there, you know, and take the kids somewhere, because interesting and new. But essentially, Super Nintendo World, I didn't know this because they are actually opening lots of other theme parks around the world. So let's get into this article. We won't spend too much time on it, but essentially just wanted to update you all on this. So 6 years after its announcement, Super Nintendo World at Universal Studios Japan is finally poised for its official opening, meaning thoughts are increasingly turning to versions in the West. Work continues apace on Super Nintendo World California, but a new report suggests the Orlando version is now unlikely to open until 2025, 2 years later than planned. To date, Super Nintendo Worlds have been confirmed for Universal Studios in Japan, Singapore, Orlando, and California. And construction on the latter park, situated within Universal Studios Hollywood, began last August. Inside the Magic has been charting its progress, if you're curious, with its latest update showing progress on theming and housing for Bowser's Castle and Mario Kart ride. And then it goes on to say more about Super Nintendo World, but essentially there's going to be one in Orlando, which makes a ton of sense because there's a lot of theme parks there, and another one in California, and Nintendo is really going full throttle with its theme parks. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a really good fit. You know, even 5-10 years ago, I was wondering why, Nintendo was perfect for a theme park because it's got a ton of interesting characters and tons of interesting themes. With its games, it makes a lot of sense. It could have its own theme park. So I'm looking forward to going to Super Nintendo World. Now, the interesting thing I wanted to point out is that there's no version in China, and really, you know, I thought, you know, where the real money is in China, like putting a Super Nintendo World there. And I would say a lot of the older generation is a little bit different to, or at least my generation anyways, people who are like in their 30s and 40s, for example. I don't think the people in China really grew up with Nintendo because consoles weren't really allowed there. I'm pretty sure they weren't allowed there to be sold with the Chinese version. And I think in the past, if you wanted to get a console, you could, but you had to import it. So that's probably why they've held off on a Super Nintendo World in China. Although I really think they could probably just scale down a version of it and make one for China, because there's 1 billion people there. There's going to be, I don't know, 500 million, almost 1 million people, middle class people in 10 years, if not now. So that would make sense to make it in China. So going completely in the other direction, and we're going to talk about a game that, well, is almost a PC exclusive. I know it's on Xbox as well, but Elite Dangerous Odyssey looks like it's just going to be coming for PC to begin with. I don't know if you guys play Elite Dangerous. I played it a little bit. I probably have about 10 hours in the game, and I really like the game. It's just that it is quite time consuming if you want to get anywhere, because the world is so open, and at the start you're kind of wanting to just play in single player mode because you want to learn everything before you get shut down, basically. And so there's a pretty long learning curve with Elite Dangerous. And I think I think the JimRPG logo is right above me, so I'm going to move this. Let me just move this a little bit. I don't know how to get rid of that watermark, and then I'll try and get rid of that watermark in the next stream, but we'll just move the webcam for now. So anyway, Elite Dangerous Odyssey, awesome space simulator. Yes, I know people say that it's kind of like a Euro Truck Simulator, but in space. But I also like Euro Truck Simulator. There is this weird thing about, I guess some people just kind of like these very straightforward games that don't take a lot of energy to work out how to play. And Euro Truck Simulator is like the most basic of that, because you're just driving from one point to another, and all you have to do is keep the truck on the road, and it's not really that hard because you can use your controller, your control stick, the 4 buttons, up, down, left, right on your keyboard. So super easy to play. And sometimes I think like people just need to get a super simple chill game where you just absolutely do nothing but enjoy what the game is delivering to you. And in Euro Truck Simulator, you can just drive and enjoy the scenery and explore new areas, which is what I love about Euro Truck Simulator. We're not here to talk about Euro Truck, we're here to talk about Elite Dangerous Odyssey. Let me get through the article first. So Elite Dangerous Odyssey, the new on-foot focused expansion for developer Frontier's long-running space sim will be opening its doors to the paying public on 29th of March when its playable alpha gets underway for Commanders on PC. Players wishing to take part in the alpha will need to have pre-ordered Elite Dangerous Odyssey's Deluxe Alpha Edition, priced at £40, which is £10 more than the standard edition, if you're wondering how much you'll be paying for the privilege and an OST. So again, if you want to play early in the alpha, which will, by my guesstimate, is about 2-3 months, could even be 6 months, but right now the alpha 2 or 3 months earlier than when it actually comes out, because if you buy the standard edition, then you can only play it when it comes out. Then you have to pay another £10 more. So to accompany the news, Frontier has released a new trailer showing off gameplay from the alpha build of Odyssey. Here, 3 players team up to complete an on-foot raid of a military outpost in order to disable its power and hinder the opposing faction. All 3 commanders in the incursion team are specially equipped for their assigned role, explains Frontier. Their tactical gear grants them an edge in their assigned tasks, whether it is to infiltrate the base, avoiding detection, lay down covering fire if the alarm is raised, hacking, or quickly extract their teammates from a tight spot if enemy forces overwhelm them. Come the arrival of Odyssey, players will for the first time be able to leave the confines of their space vessels and stroll about Elite Dangerous vast galaxy on foot, exploring everything from shiny space stations to dusty desert outposts in first person, completing combat missions, and more. Frontier says the expansion will increase the number of landable planets in Elite Dangerous by about 20%, equaling billions of traversable worlds. Elite Dangerous Odyssey will, following a coronavirus-related delay, gets its full PC release in late spring this year. PS4 and Xbox One versions are now expected in autumn. Okay, so it says here, gets its full PC release in late spring this year, which would put it about May. So if you were to play the alpha, then that would be these next couple of months. So essentially the game is complete, and now they just want a bit of bug testing. And yes, you have to pay to be part of the QA team now. I don't really have that much of a problem. The reason is, yes, I know there's a huge controversy right now around whether games can be, games should be $70 or more. I think they shouldn't change the price of games. But if they want to offer some stuff, which is like DLC and extra things, then I think that would be okay to charge for. I don't really like it, but if that's the way it's going to go down, then what is our choice, really? Do we want to hinder the entire gamer crowd, or can we only affect the people who would happily pay £10 more and they get a little bit more benefit? I don't really like having a pre-alpha, but obviously I don't mind so much, cosmetics, for example, if you want to pay for cosmetics, because at some point I would say that it's inevitable, especially with the fact that there's no body of referees refereeing, all the decisions made between the developers and the consumer. There's nobody in the middle. There's no governing body of anything right now. So it's basically like this free open market. And so you have to negotiate, right? The gamers have to negotiate with the devs. So cosmetics is kind of like, okay, I'll let you have cosmetics, but please don't make it $70 for everybody. Please don't make it $100 for everybody. And the easiest way to explain this is kind of like with Assassin's Creed, they have so many different versions, but the standard version still has a lot of content. Like, for example, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, it's like a 100-hour game. I don't think most people would really need to buy the gold edition to get that extra stuff in the gold edition. And even though they throw you a ton of content in that, I don't think it's that you wouldn't really miss it. It would only be for hardcore people who absolutely need more and more Assassin's Creed content. So if you're just, a casual player, you play a lot of different games. I think by the time you play 100 hours of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, most people will say, okay, that's plenty for $60. If you want more, you can pay for more. And they go on discount anyway. So I think I saw it for like about $10, $15 for the gold edition that adds a couple of more episodes and gives you like Assassin's Creed 3 remastered and Assassin's Creed Liberation remastered. So there has to be some sort of negotiation, pushback. I don't really like the thought of alphas going early, because essentially people who who have more money can play earlier, and I think that's kind of unfair for people who also really like the game as well. I think a few days early is fine, and that's probably where I would draw the line. Like, if you can play a week earlier, no big deal. 2 months ahead is kind of unfair, I would say. I actually like this Steam model where you have early access, where it's cheaper. So you back the developer, they offer it for cheaper, and then you get the full game afterwards. That's cool, because you have to put up with the bugs. And I think that's quite consumer friendly. But this other way around of Elite Dangerous Odyssey offering alpha for £10 more 2 months ahead, I think 2 months is a little bit too long. So Microsoft has confirmed that some Bethesda games will be full Xbox and PC exclusive. Let me read the article and then we'll come back and discuss. This one is from Tom Phillips, who's been at Eurogamer for a while. So anyway, Microsoft has confirmed that some new titles from Bethesda and parent company ZeniMax Studios will be exclusive to Xbox and PC. There's no qualifier of timed exclusivity here. There's no mention of which games. This is the next step in building an industry-leading first-party studios team, a commitment we have to our Xbox community, Xbox boss Phil Spencer wrote today in an Xbox Wire post to mark the historic $7.5 billion deal being finalized. With the addition of the Bethesda creative teams, gamers should know that Xbox consoles, PC, and Game Pass will be the best place to experience new Bethesda games, including some new titles in the future that will be exclusive to Xbox and PC players. Spencer does not specify the kinds of games he's talking about when discussing full PC and Xbox exclusivity. Does he mean the biggest titles in Bethesda's portfolio, such as the next installment in the Elder Scrolls series and the upcoming new franchise, Starfield? Will those games really skip PlayStation and the revenues to be gained from selling huge franchises there? Or is he talking of smaller projects, new entries in series such as Dishonored or Prey? Time will tell. But this does at least answer the question whether any games will be kept just for Microsoft's platforms, something many had thought might not be the case if Microsoft simply focused on earlier launches for its consoles and PC, or the availability of games that launch via Xbox Game Pass. Let me just read this last quote from Phil Spencer. It's vitally important that Bethesda continues making games the way it always has, Spencer concluded. We look forward to empowering Bethesda's creative teams to reach even more players around the world, helping make future Bethesda titles the biggest and most popular games in their history. Xbox and Bethesda have long shared a common vision for the future of gaming, both as fans and as creators. Bethesda understands the potential of Xbox Game Pass. Now that we're one team, we can start working together on the future ahead. We will have more to share about what's next for our teams later this year. I made a video about this ages ago that nobody watched, and I criticized Microsoft for buying out or for the acquisition of Bethesda, because in my opinion, I think acquisitions are bad for gaming. In general, I would say. In general, I think they're bad. Was Bethesda going broke? It's hard to say, we don't know. Although there were some games there, like Dishonored, I think Wolfenstein or Evil Dead, where when they came out, it got a less than stellar response. And so I think Bethesda were looking for a sale while it was up, or its valuation was up, because they largely create a lot of single player games. And when they did have a go with Fallout online, that didn't work out so well. Multiplayer games are very, very hit and miss because you don't actually know what the audience will respond to at that time. And multiplayer games take a long time to make as well. Same with AAA games. So you could be making this game for 3 or 4 years like they're doing with Starfield. And then all of a sudden in 3 or 4 years, everyone hates space. Like it's unlikely, but it could happen. Or everyone hates Elder Scrolls while you're actually while you're developing the game, and then what? So it's a bit of a problem for making games that are so long, big and long. So maybe that's why Bethesda wanted to sell up. But normally I would say that I'm pretty against acquisitions in general, because really that only helps the owner. I mean, think about this logically, like Microsoft owning Bethesda is kind of like Disney owning Marvel, and all of those profits end up going back to Disney rather than for, say, Bethesda or for Marvel. So big companies get bigger. This is capitalism. This is really capitalism. This is not like business or trading. This is capitalism, where you use capital to make more money. And I think in terms of big companies getting bigger, eating everybody else up, then sure, the smaller companies can go off and make smaller companies again. But having said that, if Microsoft now owns Bethesda, well, then there are a lot of other things as well. Like there are these exclusive games that gamers won't get on PS5, on Nintendo, and it will be up to Microsoft as the competing console owner to determine, like, why would anybody want to let Microsoft determine whether these games are on other consoles? Because they will just be doing it for their benefit. So, you know, a lot of people who were excited about the acquisition and also trusted that Microsoft were going to keep all of these games on all of the platforms and not make them exclusive. Well, this is what you're going to get, because all of these big companies are always going to do what's in their best interests. When you think about it, that would be very illogical if they didn't do this. If Microsoft didn't do this, that wouldn't make sense. At least they would have to give competitive advantages to their console. And so this was always inevitable. I made a video about this ages ago, which is an awesome intro. You guys should go and check it out. Maybe I'll leave a link in the description later on. But so where I explain my thoughts on the Bethesda acquisition when it happened last year in October. And, you know, I really like Phil Spencer. I think he's one of the best bosses or managers, heads going around in gaming. Because you see a lot of these suits, they don't really understand gamers. And a lot of the decisions that Phil Spencer makes tend to be all about community and gamers. So I like Phil Spencer a lot. Obviously this is not his decision to make. This is whoever owns Microsoft, all of the shareholders, they're making this decision to buy Bethesda. I don't know if Phil Spencer necessarily agrees with it, but I don't think people need to put this on Phil Spencer or even like Aaron Greenberg or any of those other Xbox heads on Twitter. They're all just doing their job. It's just marketing for them. There are big people behind decisions like this at Microsoft that determine this. At the same time, if they don't buy Bethesda, then maybe Sony will buy Bethesda. So then I guess that's kind of like for governing bodies to go and decide whether these deals should be going through. In general, I think is a bad idea. And if these companies actually took it upon themselves, like Microsoft and Sony, go, hey, we can't be buying all of these companies up. I know that sounds crazy, but with this whole, I guess, capitalist mentality, all of these studios are going to be owned by these console companies. I think there is some concern to be had there. A lot of people were talking about Microsoft going to buy Sega. I don't think they will, because Sega has a lot of other businesses, like resort business, that they do that Microsoft wouldn't want, and they'd have to kind of split that in half, and there's no way Sega would do that, because why would they want to sell a pretty good business for them that has been their brand for so long? So I don't think they're going to do that. Somebody might buy Capcom or Namco because they're fully Capcom anyway, because Capcom is basically a full games development, or they have a number of studios, but they only deal with games. So if any company gets bought out, it's probably Capcom. But anyway, I just wanted to provide my sort of view on Microsoft and the whole Bethesda thing again. Whenever they do something like this, they're never going to hit you with the hardest thing or their ultimate goal. Like, they're never going to say, yeah, all of our games, or now all of Bethesda games are now going to be Xbox and PC. They will slowly bring it in over time. It's kind of like Creep, or I would like to say Creep anyway, where they'll just slowly change the mind share or change the shift in the mindsets of people. What they really want is for this defense force to build up for them, so that there'll be people that argue about this while they go and do whatever they need to do, make all of their Xbox and PC games exclusive. Now, I think they will eventually come out onto PS5 and Nintendo Switch on other consoles, but I think they will definitely be timed exclusive. I think they'll be timed exclusive for all of these Bethesda titles, 100%, and it'll be on Game Pass as well, because they want to sell consoles. They want to sell you the system where they then they can sell you other games, and so, you know, $7.5 billion is cheap for Bethesda. Seriously, Bethesda, a number of their games could easily make $7.5 billion within like 3 or 4 years. So with Microsoft having money sitting around, this is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer decision. I think it's a cheap deal, kind of like what you saw with Disney buying Marvel for like $4 billion back in the day. Okay, let's talk about Nintendo Switch Pro rumors this week. And we don't often talk that much about Nintendo Switch on my channel. I'm mostly a PC gamer. I have a Nintendo Switch. I'm not that interested, to be perfectly honest, in Nintendo Switch. Sorry to all of the Nintendo Switch fans that are out there. But in general, I have both in the same room. So I have a 27-inch 1440p monitor, or I can go and play the Nintendo Switch. So more often time than not, if I'm in my room, the choice is super easy, unless I want to play games with the children, and then we get the Nintendo Switch out for some multiplayer, which is awesome, because I just have 3 or 4 games on the Nintendo Switch. I've got Super Mario Party, Super Mario Kart, or Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and Super Smash Brothers. We've been playing that for like the last 3 years, and yes, we like some new games. Maybe we'll get Splatoon, but we're happy to just keep playing the same games, which is honestly something that you can say about Nintendo that you can't really say for a lot of games. Like, it's quite easy to come back and play them and pick them up and play. So I like the Nintendo Switch for that. And actually, funny thing is, I've had all of the Nintendos, pretty much all of the Nintendos except the Super Nintendo, which is a real bummer because that's the only one that I really truly wanted. We'll have to get into that story another time, but let's talk about the Nintendo Switch Pro. And the Nintendo Switch Pro will reportedly have 720p OLED screen or display in 4K on TVs. So let me go through the article first and then we'll come back and discuss. Nintendo's widely anticipated Switch Pro model will feature a 7-inch 720p OLED screen and output at up to 4K when connected to a TV. That's according to a Bloomberg report, which cites sources aware that Samsung will provide its screens and begin production on those from June. Nintendo's plan is to reveal the new Switch model this year, with an eye to launch in time for the lucrative holiday season, the report concludes, though no firmer release window is given. The current Switch offers a 6.2-inch screen, while the Switch Lite screen is 5.5 inches. Both are LCD rather than OLED, meaning this new model, if it launches as reported, will boast a larger and higher contrast display. The online response to a news of a 720p screen has been mixed, but the gains from a 1080p resolution on a screen that size would likely not be as pronounced as some have suggested, while it would also decrease battery life and likely drive up the unit's overall price. Okay, so it goes on for a little while longer and I'll stop it there. But I think there's a few key points right at the top of the article that we should discuss if you're interested in the Nintendo Switch Pro. And the first thing is that it has a 7-inch 720p OLED screen, which I think is a really good size. As you know, with the current Switch, I don't know if they have a picture here. They don't. But it has really thick bezels. So obviously you guys know what a Nintendo Switch looks like, but as you can see there, why can't I get a bigger picture? As you can see there, there's very big bezels on this. You could easily fit a 7-inch screen where that black border is there, and I think if they did that and don't make it any bigger, that would be really cool. That would be much needed because it's so weird to have such big black bezels. That kind of brings me back to like the old iPad days, and we haven't had bezels on an iPad, at least the side bezels anyway, for at least 5 or 6 years. I remember when this came out and it was like, what are you doing? Like, you want to make a 5-inch screen, why don't you look at, say, an iPhone, because an iPhone has very minimal bezels. Now, maybe it's because they wanted to make these Joy-Cons this size, because the Joy-Cons are very small already. But I think it would be okay if they made it a little bit smaller. Not too small, but a little bit smaller. But now, I guess it makes sense to make a 7-inch screen. I think the 7-inch screen would be worthwhile. I think the current screen is a little bit small on the Switch. I think that's a good thing. And the fact that they're going to OLED, I think that's pretty good as long as it doesn't drive up the price too much. I think that's a big marketing term. People just seem to want OLEDs these days. If you come out with an LCD screen now, I think there would be a huge backlash with gamers. And it's finally time Nintendo fans had some decent hardware. Isn't that right? Like, surely I don't think you would really want to go with an... Maybe... Okay, OBS says we're back, so I think we're back. Please. Okay, I think we're back. The stream health says it's excellent, so I'm going to continue on. I don't even remember where I was, but yeah, I think OLED, it's time for Nintendo to go with OLED. Doesn't make sense to keep on going with an LCD. I think with LCDs, I like the technology with LCDs. It's tried and trusted, and it's not that much different to OLED. For example, my iPhone 11R or 10R is still in LCD. And can people honestly say with a top quality LCD, it's actually worse than it's that much worse than an OLED? like I have two LCDs in front of me right now, and there's one bad LCD and one halfway decent LCD. That these are just old monitors that I'm using at my second location, but you can tell the difference with this. But with an iPhone XR, it's hard to tell the difference with the top quality LCD screens. And don't forget I actually like the Vita 2000, which had the LCD in it when they switched back from OLED to LCD. I like the LCD better. I like the form factor. And I think the color reproduction on the LCD is better. The OLED had more troubles, and there were also a lot of cases where the OLED was going to die anyway because it was such early technology back then. But obviously now it's like 10 years later. I don't think we should have any issues with OLED reliability. I think the OLED reliability is really good. But yeah, I think if the price increase or the cost for Nintendo isn't too much, then absolutely they need to go with OLED. Say like if the panel is like $35 versus $50, $15 more, even though it's like 25% cost, then I think it's worth it. It's definitely worth it for them to go with OLED. Okay, so I think that's the first thing. The other thing, of course, is that it's 720p. Now, a lot of people have complained that it's 720p and not 1080p, especially when phone resolution can get so much higher. Well, I would say phones, you're not actually playing games all the time. Well, you know, if you're selling somebody a phone, you're not selling them as a primary gaming device, which you're always going to be gaming. A lot of other people are doing browsing on the internet, doing lots of other things on their phone, so it's not going to waste as much power for very high resolution screen. So that's why you see a lot of those Samsung mobiles have very high resolution screens. Yes, people play games on them, but that will probably eat up the battery very quickly if they play at such high resolutions. So the number one priority really is obviously having enough resolution on your screen so that things are actually clear and sharp. So once you achieve that, once you get to like this sort of retina thing that Apple have determined is like over 200 dpi, 200 dots per inch, then I don't think it's that much of an issue. I think, I might be wrong, but I think Vita is also 200 dpi. It's a 540p screen on 5 inches. So that's perfectly fine. Like, can anybody really go back to a Vita and go, hey, the text is not sharp? Because it is. It's clear on a 540p screen because at that resolution is sharp. However, if you go back to a 3DS or a 3DS XL, which is super bad, it's a 240-inch screen, 240p screen on a 4-inch screen, and that's, I don't know, like 1/8 the resolution. I didn't do the math, but really bad resolution. The text is not sharp at all, and games aren't fun to play at 240p on a 3DS. I think it's 240p. I haven't checked. But anyway, 720p is fine for a 7-inch screen when you're gaming. I think in terms of reading articles and things, maybe it wouldn't be as good. But for gaming, you wouldn't really notice that much. And you can adjust the text so that it would be sharp on a 7-inch 720p screen. I know a lot of people are probably really picky on that sort of thing, so we'll probably leave it there. Now, the other part I want to talk about is the connection to a 4K. Now, we don't know if it's going to be upscaled or if it's actually 4K out of the Nintendo. I would imagine they're probably going to go for a 4K output, which is tied to the actual resolution being 4K in the game. But the way they're going to do it will be some sort of checkerboarding like the PS4 does it. So I don't know if you guys know this, but like the Tegra, the Nintendo Tegra that is currently in the Nintendo Switch right now, that is about 200 to 400 gigaflops or 0.4 teraflops in on TV mode. And 0.4 teraflops is barely passable for a 720p gaming machine. It can do it because Nintendo said we only care about our first party games. They worry about their first party game first when they design their consoles, and then third parties have to adapt. You can see games like the Outer Wilds or the Outer Worlds being like 340p or 540p on a 1080p monitor. Yeah, it generally looks really bad. So clearly not enough power in the Nintendo Switch currently. Now, if they were to go to 4K, I would say that you'd need at least 4 teraflops minimum. And we don't have what the next Tegra is going to be like. So we don't know what NVIDIA is going to put in there. I suppose they could probably put in, say, like one of their lower end Turing GPUs as part of a APU. But essentially, this is Zen 2 APUs or Ryzen 4000, and they've actually got some gigaflops here. This is basically an APU that's got the CPU and GPU on the same chip. And then with the Ryzen 4800U, you're getting about 1.8 teraflops, roughly. Obviously, the Ryzen teraflops are different to the NVIDIA teraflops. But I think that if you take 1.8, even at 1.8, I wouldn't say that 1.8 teraflops is really truly enough for a 4K, because you're kind of asking, say, like the PS4, which is also 1.8 teraflops, to go and just simply output checkerboarding 4K. So there'd have to be some form of DLSS, and there would have to be some sort of checkerboarding. And a lot of the games would really only cater for that Nintendo style of graphics where it's not very graphically intensive. Not a lot of geometry in their games, for example. That's why you have Mii characters. So I think 1.8 is still not really enough. And then if they were to put out this year, we'd have to get some sort of information about NVIDIA's next Tegra chip, and there simply hasn't been any information. I don't know if this is coming out this year, is what I'm trying to say. Even though it says here that the Bloomberg report states that Samsung will provide its screens and begin production on those from June. So the timeframes for manufacturing are actually really close. Okay, so if they're developing these screens in June, the first screens will go to the manufacturing factories for these Switch Pros probably in a couple of months' time. So it'll probably be in August or September. And then they would also probably take a couple of months to get the first one complete. Maybe about a month or so. So maybe by October, you'd have the very first Switch Pro ready. So I think that would probably be a bit late in terms of producing lots of Switch Pros. They would want to have like maybe 10 million Switch Pros, maybe 5 million Switch Pros at launch. This is looking like it'll probably be a 2022 thing, if not late 2022. We don't have any information about the new Nintendo Switch, if it's going to be outputting at 4K. I think the current line of CPUs, APUs, and GPUs, they're probably not enough power for Nintendo right now if they want to play at 4K. I think 1.8 teraflops is not enough power. Okay, so we're going to talk about NFTs And then we'll take a little bit of a break, 2-minute break, so I can take a drink and then recharge for the other hardware news that I also like to present. But let's talk about NFTs. And there's been a lot of controversy about NFTs over the past week. I think this article sums up quite a lot of interesting thoughts about both sides that I wanted to share. So Jason Schreier has an interesting article about NFTs. It says, the title is Gaming Crypto Artists Caught Controversy While Cashing In on NFTs. Now, just a quick, description of NFTs. Essentially, is a piece of digital art, and it has some sort of cryptocurrency or blockchain technology on it, where it can create unique ownership of that digital art. So that's why it's very valuable, because the artist has said that they're only going to make one, or they're going to make 10 or whatever, and then he's going to sell that, and then you can prove that it's only that's the only one that exists, or if there's 10, then only 10 of those exist. So essentially, NFTs, digital art with cryptocurrency. And it's operating on the Ethereum pool, mining pools, or group, Ethereum group, whatever. Okay, so last week the artist Ben Morrow was dividing his paychecks into 3 categories: rent, food, and art. Now, suddenly, he's a multi-millionaire. Morrow, who has created concept art for films including The Hobbit and video games such as Halo, is newly wealthy thanks to the phenomenon. And I think the stream status is kind of poor at the moment, so hopefully it'll get back to in excellent health for the stream. If it's kind of stuttery, then just please hold. Hopefully it will get back to maintaining better quality for the stream. Okay, anyway, let me continue. Morrow, who has created concept art for films, including The Hobbit and video games such as Halo, is newly wealthy thanks to the phenomenon of non-fungible tokens, or NFTs. These tokens are a type of cryptocurrency similar to Bitcoin, but each one is unique and can't be replaced or replicated. They've grown popular among digital artists because they serve as certificates of authenticity. In the online world, where anyone can replicate images an infinite number of times, NFTs allow artists to create a stamp of ownership. With ownership comes value. Over the past few months, NFTs have exploded in popularity as cryptocurrencies gained mainstream acceptance. Collectors dished out more than $60 million in February for GIFs, JPEGs, memes, and other art that's only available on a screen. Video game artists who are native to digital creations have embraced the phenomenon. Ralph Grassetti, the art director of the popular video game God of War, has been selling 3D models of celebrities like Tesla Inc. Chief Executive Officer Elon Musk for tens of thousands of dollars. Halo Infinite art director Nicholas Bouvier sold a painting of a castle Tuesday for nearly $35,000. And Morrow's collection of art, which he sold in the form of collectible card packs, has earned more than $2 million on an NFT website called Viv3. I still kind of don't believe it, Morrow said. The whole thing moved so fast. One day, all right, I'm broke. Now I'm a millionaire. Sure, I guess. The NFT phenomenon has made some top artists rich, but it has also been controversial in the video game art scene. Critics point to the astronomical energy costs of mining cryptocurrency, which requires high-end computers to operate constantly at full power, as an ecological disaster. Most NFTs are linked to a cryptocurrency called Ethereum, which was estimated in 2018 to use more energy than Iceland. The creators of Ethereum have been promising for years to switch to a more ecologically friendly mechanism, but that hasn't come to fruition yet. Okay, so the couple of quotes that I want to read from this. So, I would never engage with Ethereum, NFTs, and crypto art, said Douglas Copeland, an artist who has worked on games like Lawbreakers. I don't believe I could morally do that with climate change currently hitting at the rate it's going. Morrow, he says, I've seen all the ups and downs, so my cynicism level is pretty high. Morrow said, I plan for the worst and hope for the best in all situations, and I'm doing that here. digital art hasn't been capable. Moro compares the NFT phenomenon to the music industry, in which a single hit song might alter a musician's entire career. Digital art hasn't been capable of that until now, he says. In the same way, not every person who picks up a guitar will have a big hit song. It at least gives all of us an opportunity to have that chance. What Bitcoin did for money, this is going to do for art. I missed it for that thing, not going to miss it for this one. He began working with Viv3 to create listings for some of the personal art he'd been making for the past decade, then began selling them on March 3. His collection sold out in 7 minutes. Yeah, so, okay, I think there's a few interesting points that I wanted to bring up. So, essentially the first one was the quote about Douglas Copeland, where he said that I don't believe I could morally do that with climate change currently hitting at the rate it's going, and also that NFTs use more energy than Iceland. So I think we have to really keep a lot of these things in perspective and weigh up the benefits that it brings to people. These are economic, financial benefits that bring to these people versus blocking all of these people out in the hopes of creating, I guess, or saving off a disaster that you think might happen. And I am pro climate change 100%. Okay, don't get me wrong about that. The thing is that, and I think this mirrors a lot of things in the real world as well, where say the West will say something to, say, like China and India, and they say, hey, you can't use up, I guess, all of these, you can't keep burning fossil fuels, for example. So it's a little bit like that. However, I would say that the big difference right here is that you're affecting the individual, okay? So if you're affecting the individual or the working class or the people in general, I think you really have to look at something to see whether that is a significant amount that is actually causing damage to whatever you're saying. Say, like, if you think it's going to be an environmental disaster, is that more of an environmental disaster than, say, a big corporation spewing out tons and tons of carbon, for example? Where are we looking at first to solve the problem? Like, why are we going after all the little guys trying to make a little bit of money versus the big corporations that end up doing most of the damage to our environment? This is the problem I have with people attacking mining, with attacking cryptocurrencies, with hacking NFTs. Look at this, for example. It says right here at the top that Ben Moro had no money. And then we have other people who says, well, I would never do it because that would be an ecological disaster. But we have to frame it in terms of, well, the actual impact of who's actually doing what. Say, for example, like the corporation, for example, if they're spewing out tons and tons of carbon or pollution, well, then obviously that is the issue there, and they're doing way more damage as a corporation than, say, an individual who's mining with like 1 card or 10 cards. So I agree, like, if you want to talk about this as an environmental issue, well, we really have to look at the people who are doing a lot of the damage first. Try and reduce that first, and then think about, okay, well, 90% of the pollution is gone, but can the other 10% or 90% of the population create the 10% of the pollution? And if it's actually benefiting people, if they're actually making wealth from this, if they're creating value from this, especially when this person just suddenly got rich, he had no money, and somebody was willing to give him that much money, $35,000 or $2 million, for a bit of art so that he can escape, I guess, I won't say poverty, I will say allow him some wealth. I think it takes a lot to put a blanket statement, a blanket rule on everything, and then lock a lot of people out of creating wealth. So that's my take on the whole mining, the whole gaming situation. A lot of gamers are saying, "Oh, look, you took my cards," like the miners, or even especially the small time miners. They're saying that these small time miners are taking up all of their cards. Well, I don't think so, because all of the pictures that you see online with the massive factories of ASICs and GPUs, I think that's the real problem there, where like the massive corporations are taking all of those GPUs. That's the problem right there, where 10% of the people are taking 90% of the GPUs. And for the other miners, please, go and watch some mining channels. If you're against mining, go and watch some mining channels and look at how many mining cards they have. I would say that most of them would probably have less than 100 cards. And that is not your issue right there. All the top miners may have less than 100 cards. Why? Because they're operating out of their own home. They have a limited amount of power in their own home. Most of the power points are limited to like 13 amps or whatever it is that you're allowed in a house. So it's pretty hard for them to buy up thousands of GPUs like massive corporations are doing. You'd have to end up needing some sort of like I guess your own electrical transfer station, substation, to be able to do that. So I don't think home miners are the problem here. And if you have 100 cards, what's 100 times 4? It's $400 a day. $400 a day, how much is that? $400 a day times $150,000 a year. Yeah, you could retire on that. I mean, well, not retire, but like you wouldn't have to go to work for that. But this is not millions of dollars. This is not like those corporations building GPU farms. These are not the GPU. You can't do it out of your own home. These mining guys on YouTube are not your enemy. They're not the issue here. The issue here is the massive GPU mining farms that are taking all of those GPUs. And you know, if you want to put it back on Nvidia for selling these people all of their cards behind closed doors, either through their AIB partners, which Nvidia can easily stop, because if AIB partners like Zotac or even MSI are selling all these laptops to undisclosed people, companies, selling them by the thousands, by pallet loads, well then, yeah, put it back on Nvidia to tell them to stop selling 90% of the GPUs to 10% of the people out there. Anyway, so I think, again, with this NFT thing, I don't think we should be thinking about, well, why do we need to stop NFTs? These are just artists trying to make some money on the side, and with that piece of art that they created, how much energy would that ultimately waste in the blockchain? I would say not very much, especially when there's a transfer of wealth from very rich people who desire these pieces of digital art and happy to transfer that over to people with, well, at least at the moment, people are not as wealthy, for example. Of course, there are probably lots of digital artists now that are very, very wealthy. But again, I don't think you'd be able to buy it for $2 million if you didn't have that money anyway. So if you have like $2 million, I don't think that is that big of a deal. I would say though that would probably contribute to inflation, simply because as soon as you pass money around like that, that obviously creates inflation. So if this card is worth $1 million, then this other card has to be worth at least $1.5 million. So the only problem here is the inflation that it creates. I think the amount of energy produced, I think, is a little bit unfair for Jason Schreier to say that the amount of Ethereum uses more energy than Iceland. Well, Iceland has like 100,000 or 300,000 people, I think, and you can't really compare that to say like India. India has like 1 billion people. Again, we've got to look at we've got to look at things in perspective. If we have, we need to look at people or corporations that are polluting the most first, and then think about how we can reduce that amount of pollution first in the biggest polluters, rather than trying to stop the little guys. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of a break, a 2-minute break, and then I'm going to recharge, get a drink. But we'll be right back with some hardware news. We're going to talk about the MSI promoting their cryptocurrency laptops. And we're also going to talk about the 11700K review controversy that happened during the week. So stick around, we'll be right back. Hey, what's going on everyone? We're back, and we're going to talk a little bit of hardware news now, and this one was pretty funny to me. This is MSI. They thought this was a good idea to promote mining and gaming together, and I'll tell you why it's a bad idea. This article is from Video Cards. So it says here, MSI G76 Raider is a perfect gaming crossed out mining laptop. And essentially their ad is mining experiment with MSI gaming laptop. This is promoted on their blog. Because everyone is so excited about mining. And I have no problems with people being excited about mining. I'm not sure if the company should actually, I'm not saying to keep it a secret, but But the problem is this. The problem is that they could use this to increase the prices of these laptops. And that's probably where I would say, yeah, that's probably why they're going to do this, because now they can charge more money for it. So obviously for gamers, that's probably a bad thing if they're going to increase the price of these laptops, because now, oh look, now you can do mining. And I don't think this should be something that should be kept a dirty secret from everybody. But I just want, I guess, these companies to say, hey, look, yes, it does do, but we're not going to increase the price. If they did that, no problem. But anytime you're going to put money mining, oh, you can get your money back. Well, then if Nvidia put that on the box, like, hey, look, you can earn $100 per month with this graphics card, well, that's kind of like cause for them to jack up the price, which is a concern to me. Maybe it's heading that way. Maybe there's nothing we can do about it. But I think MSI didn't have to do this. These laptops are going to sell anyway. There is really no need for them to go and market their laptops as mining laptops. Anyway, so it says here the author has provided initial mining performance estimated at 52.8 mega hashes per second with the Dagger Hashimoto algorithm with nice hash mining software. This is equal to a desktop RTX 3070 graphics card. Now remember, so this is an inside the laptop is a RTX 3080 GPU, and the RTX 3080 laptop GPU or mobile GPU is actually the same as the 3070. And if it's a 3070, they could easily get this up to a 60 mega hash per second. So this is straight off the default settings. I don't know why they don't have a fan speed there. So I think, and look, it gets very hot. I don't know if this is a good idea to mine with that if the GPU is at 75%, but I guess they seem like they don't have problem. And if, you know, if your laptop breaks down, you can always point to this, the fact that, hey, look, you told me you could mine with this, now you're going to have to fix it. And I think by law they would have to, because they're marketing these things as mining now. So, yeah, so that's one thing that people should think about if they're going to buy this MSI laptop, because it says RTX 3080. Well, it's actually really like a desktop 3070. So Nvidia is trying to play around with like the naming conventions of these GPUs a lot. So the 3080 laptop is actually really just a 3070. And I think there are some, well, 3080s that have 16 gigabytes. And we know that's not really possible with the desktop version because of the memory bus being 320 bits. It would have to be 256-bit if it's like 8 gigs or 16 gigabytes of VRAM. So this is really just, this RTX 3080 is really just a RTX 3070. Oh, and then the other thing here I want to point out was that it says, this means that this GPU has the highest TDP set by MSI, in this case 155 watt. And 155 watt would probably be the highest, or you wouldn't have to run it at 155 watts if you wanted to mine, because I got my 3070 down to about 130 watts at 60 mega hash second. So you can lower this, you can lower the temps a little bit. But anyway, yeah, I think this is a bad look more than anything. Like, I'm not saying, you know, they should stop it, just, yeah, it's a bad look. And I think it's also kind of bad for gamers, because it probably means they want to increase the price, or they want to offset the price that you're going to see at retail, because now it can mine. All right, let's talk about the 11700K review that came out this week from AnandTech. So AnandTech, this article is from Dr. Ian Catras, and he bought his CPU from Mind Factory, and Mind Factory apparently were not under NDA, so they felt like they were free to sell their CPUs early. They didn't even think it was early. They just thought that it just didn't come with an NDA, or they were given the approval that they could go ahead and sell the 11700K CPU. So at some point there was a misunderstanding between Intel and Mind Factory, and Mind Factory continued to sell these 11700K CPUs. Anyway, Anantech got a hold of one of those CPUs and did a review way ahead of everybody else. And I think there's two parts to this. So we'll just go through the review first. We can have a look at some of those numbers. I did a post on the community channel or community page where I talked about how the 11700K numbers didn't look too good. But then that created some controversy, not with my post, but like with a lot of other people on Twitter, on other social media. And some people were saying, hey, look, like for example, CapFrameX was saying that you're not using the latest BIOS, or not using the BIOS that will be coming out at retail, so therefore your numbers are wrong. So that created a bit of a controversy. And then there was another aspect of controversy where some people complained that Anantech broke the NDA because they were also going to be given a CPU from Intel, and effectively what's the difference between that and buying one from the open market or a retailer? Because a lot of other people felt like they were under NDA and they didn't want to break their NDA with Intel. A lot of things to talk about. Let's go through the review first. And I've gone straight to the gaming section because, well, I think one thing interesting to note is that the 11700 gets really hot. Now, we know that Intel is basically on 14 nanometer for the last, 5 years? And they haven't been able to progress to 10 nanometer on desktops. They've been able to do it for their mobile chips, which are 4-core 8-thread, but they haven't been able to do it for any CPU that has more cores than that. So there is a scaling issue there. They can make small chips, but they can't make large chips with 10 nanometer. Or they can't make it well. But anyway, I think there's something interesting to see here. The fact that the peak power consumption is really hot. And initially, this graph actually just had this one at the bottom, 11700K, but now they've got two bars there. So one is for AVX2 instruction, and the other one is for AVX512. So AVX512, not used for gaming, but this is just an instruction set that's Intel only. So this is 291 watts. So everyone's complaining about how hot it gets. And indeed, the 11700K and also Common Lake, they get hot because Intel's had to squeeze out more performance out of the same chip. And I don't know the nitty gritty of like how they squeeze out more performance on the same chip. But obviously there are generational improvements in the architecture of the Intel CPUs. And so, so for one generation, they might be able to do 100 watts. Next generation, they can probably squeeze out a little bit more power, like do 150 watts and get like another 10% performance, that sort of thing. Anyway, yeah, so that's something to be aware of if you're going to buy an Intel CPU. But I think the best comparison is this one here, which is the 10700K. The previous generation runs at 204 watts. The 11700K runs at 224 watts, and this is for AVX2 instruction sets. So it is more power intensive. It will run hotter. And is the performance improvement worth it for that extra 20 watts? Let's find out. And I know this is a gaming channel, so probably not going to be doing a lot of the other things. Let's go straight to the gaming results. Now, the reason why people were really disappointed with 11700K was that it actually it looks like it performs less than the 10700K, performs worse than last generation. And that's kind of weird to think about, because technically the 11700K should be a bigger chip than the 10700K. I haven't actually seen the die sizes yet, but I would imagine because this 11700K is basically like the 11900K. It's the full chip, and the 10700K is not, because that would be the cut. It has 2 cores less. I would imagine those cores would be smaller than the 11700K cores. So maybe their experiments with trying to port the architecture for, I think it was called, I know it's called Cypress Cove now, but like Sunny Cove, the port process didn't work as well as they intended. Because you can see, like, okay, even at 600p, which is the lowest resolution, it barely beats the 10700K. It barely beats it. This should be 10% ahead. So, and by the way, this is on what is kind of called the old BIOS, because people were criticizing AnandTech for using the old BIOS. So we'll have to wait and see on the 30th what the numbers really are for the retail BIOS. I would say that just, yeah, I would say that it's probably not going to change all that much to make this a big difference. The biggest change I would see would, okay, the 11700K would now be beating the 10700K by about 10%, because that was what we were led to believe, that it would probably, that performance improvement would be about 10% over the last generation. If we look at, and that's Deus Ex Mankind Divided, that's like a 3 or 4 year old game. So we've got Final Fantasy 14 here, 3 FPS, sorry, well, that's 1080p as well. And who's playing at 768p? And this is performing less than last generation. So I will hold, I guess, my opinion. Not that it really matters, because no one cares about my opinion anyway. But I'm not ready to quite say that the 11700K is a failure. But even if it beats it by like 5-10%, I don't think that changes things that much. I don't think we can suddenly, unless it beats it by 20%, then we can go, okay, yeah, Rocket Lake is a massive improvement and perform above our expectations. If it gets 10%, then that would be at my expectations. And currently right now it's at 0%, and yeah, it's performing lower than my expectations. World of Tanks, that should be pretty heavy in terms of CPU. And again, such a high FPS, and you're barely getting any difference. Okay, so, oh, right, okay. Borderlands 3. So Borderlands 3 significantly beats the 10700K, but this is about 5%. So not even that comprehensive, I would imagine. Again, I'm not 100% sure why. And even in their review, they don't really say why Borderlands 3 ends up beating out the 10700K here. At 360p, very low, the 11700K beats it by about 3%. So essentially the 11700K isn't really doing that well. The 10700K once again beats the 11700K in Formula 1 2019. In Far Cry 5, the 11700K wins. Yep, it wins at 720p. Gears Tactics, the 11700K overwhelmingly beats the 10700K. Now this is the 10% improvement that I'm talking about. But that looks like that's pretty much it. Like Red Dead Redemption 2. Sorry, I skipped GTA 5, but it's a pretty old game, and I don't expect it to be that CPU intensive. So in Red Dead 2, it's basically the same. Whoops. In Red Dead 2 at 384p, it loses. Let me just check GTA 5 while we're here. Basically about the same. Yep, basically the same. And finally, Strange Brigade. I think somebody said something about Strange Brigade. Oh, yeah, it lost us 10700K. So overall, I would say the 10700K is the winner there. It uses less power. It's faster in a lot of games. But I would say wait until the 30th of March till we get a lot of other reviews with the correct BIOS. And then you'll be able to see. If you want to make a decision now, I would say the 11700K loses. But again, is that really a big deal? I mean, surely you would just get whatever is out there at the moment. Now the 11700K has some advantages. It has PCIe Gen Lane 4, so you'll be able to use that with your graphics card for the first time. And also with Rocket Lake, especially with some of the budget models, like say like the 10400F, you'll be able to run it at higher memory settings because they're going to allow XMP profiles or allow you to memory overclock those on the B460 motherboard, B560 motherboard. So I think there are some usefulness to getting the Rocket Lake chips over the Comet Lake chips in some regards. So if you were to get a 10400F, I would say probably get the 11400F. Then buy the B560 motherboard, overclock your memory. You wouldn't be able to do that on the B460 motherboard. But anyway, the controversy part, right? So Capframe X actually, I'm not going to say get angry. Oh, by the way, how about this? Populism updates. So a guy dressed as the Joker is running for governor in the Japanese prefecture of Chiba. Anyway, Capframe X, yeah, he said, he basically called out Ian Catras for saying, for the review, because it didn't use the retail BIOS. The retail BIOS might be different to the old BIOS. So he believes that with the updated BIOS, you'll get better results for Intel. There's a tweet here from Capframe X. He says, I want to say sorry to Ian Catras. My words were too harsh, so I deleted the tweet with criticism of his Rocket Lake review. But Ian said, this is slightly unrelated, although it's the same thing, but this is about whether they should have published their review ahead of time. So this is Ian, and he says, so I'm being called out for double standards given that I have previously highlighted when Roman posted a review 5 minutes early. Roman is Der Bauer. I take it you guys all know Der Bauer and his YouTube channel. He wasn't under NDA apparently, similar to us at Anintech when we posted a review 25 days early. Let me explain why it's not a double standard. We published 25 days early with non-NDA parts we purchased at retail. We kept the CPU manufacturer informed that we were publishing early and offered a right to reply in our testing. We did all the legal diligence required. When an outlet publishes 5 minutes early from the embargo, that's not the same goal. They don't inform the manufacturer, give them a chance to respond. They didn't on that occasion say that they had a part not under NDA. Posting 5 minutes early, the audience assumed it was the same chip everyone else had got. The goal is solely explicit, as it always is with publishing only a few minutes early. Beat everyone to the SEO and come top of the search. If, as an outlet, you had the non-NDA CPU for longer, you could have published earlier, but you chose not to. In these circumstances, the outlet only wants to fly under the radar by posting as close to the embargo as possible. It was all about beating everyone to the punch when it comes to review day search traffic by being first and acting like it was a review sample under NDA all along. There's no sense of fair play here, none at all. But to then respond to me in DMs with why so salty, while you continue to say it's a double standard, then yes, it's clear that we do have very different standards when it comes to this sort of thing. Moreover, claiming that your NDA review sample was purchased unit is just as asinine. We have a legal purchase and paper trail. And in the DM that Ian has posted, he writes, and now Anantech publishes 25 days early. Congrats on solid double standards. And of course, I could also now publish 11700K content and claim I bought it at Mind Factory, but in reality, it would be a sample. Nobody can tell. Congrats on that, Anantech. I thought that was pretty funny, and I wanted to share that with everyone. I'm not a fan of, I guess I am a fan of both of them. I'm not a fan of just one of them, so I'm not taking sides. But in this respect, I think Anantech or Ian is probably more correct than De Bauer. I think De Bauer is probably just a little bit, he also wanted to, well, he thought maybe it was unfair that Anantech had a go at them because they published their review early as well. And I think here, there is a big difference. Now, I don't know too much about if you go like 1 month ahead, whether that's going to affect reviews 1 month later. I would have to assume that if people know what the product is 1 month ahead, maybe they wouldn't actually search again in 1 month's time. Although Hardware Unboxed, excuse me, Hardware Unboxed below says that to them it doesn't matter 1 month earlier. So I'll take his word for it that a top reviewer like Hardware Unboxed, it doesn't affect them too much if it's 1 month earlier. But if you post a week earlier or a day earlier or 5 minutes earlier, then it affects a lot of other people, especially if your CPU is not under NDA and everybody else's is under NDA, and you post 5 minutes earlier so you can come out top. I think you specifically know what you're doing then. So I don't think De Bauer is quite correct in that. Now, I really like De Bauer's content, so I had no problem with him. So, De Bauer, if you're out there listening, for me, that doesn't really make that much sense. Okay, so personally for me, if your review sample is available for purchase outside, then if you're an outlet, if I was an outlet, for example, I would go to Intel and ask them, hey, can I actually review this that I bought outside from a legal means? The NDA is with Intel and Mind Factory. That's got none of my business. If I can get it from Mind Factory, if they made the mistake to sell them, well, that's not my issue. But of course, you want to keep up relations and relationships. Of course, you should go and tell Intel where you got it from, ask them if you can review it or not, and then you can, if they say, no, please don't review it, then that would be cool. Like I wouldn't publish my review because you want to look after relationships. And now, in their article, in Anantech's article, Ian's article, they already said that they went to Intel and they said, they asked them and they got no response, or their response was, Intel's response was, we have no comment on this, so you're free to do whatever you want, basically. So that's why they went ahead with their review. They even asked Intel. So basically, essentially, they got their approval to publish the review. And honestly, the most important thing really here is that the review actually serves a lot of, it serves the consumer first. which is what I always advocate for. So it's good for people to know about the latest CPUs as early as possible. These NDAs are, of course, to serve the company because they want to line up all of their marketing in a row, and so they get that big push when it finally launches and sell lots of CPUs. But for people who are actually buying these CPUs, it pays to actually have information ahead of time, which is why my channel is based around a lot of leaks on information that is already out there. And even if that information gets updated later on, well, I can update that information on my channel. Yes, you might be watching an old video at some point, but at least you'll know what date that was. And if there's more updated information, of course, I will provide that on my channel as a new video. So you can continue updating that information probably until things get officially released. Then there's a review, then we actually know what all the numbers are. Then after that, I don't see why we need to have a review as time goes on, because that review was for that specific moment of time. So maybe 3 years later down the track, you might want to do a review. That's an entirely different issue altogether. I thought this conversation was really interesting. Tech Yes City, which he also makes great content and is a fellow Australian. He wrote, I wouldn't have done it. Getting the scoop like that, it just creates more frustration on your relations with people on the front lines at these companies. I hope someone doesn't lose their job over this dude. Hardware Unboxed writes, it just creates more frustration on your relations with people on the front lines of these companies. That's the last thing Ian should care about if he's interested in doing his job well. Journalism, so like you're providing journalism for people, not the companies. So I don't care to explore that further. I hope someone doesn't lose their job over this, dude. This is interesting though. So whose job is at risk due to Ian buying and reviewing this product, and how does Ian's actions here make it more likely that anyone would be let go? Tech Yes City writes, the retailer who sold it openly. Which retailer was this? Because I know it's a massive no-no. So I responded, I said, what's the difference between Ian or any other consumer buying a product and reviewing it ahead of time? Mind Factory was under the assumption. Okay, I'm back, and hello everyone. Urizo, hello, and Stephen Hart, hello, how are you? I will get to your question in just a second. Please don't leave. But yeah, finally back. Okay, let me just quickly finish this and then I'll get to your comments. We'll have an after show of like, I don't know, half an hour or something where we can have a chat. But essentially I was saying, I think Ian is doing us a favor by getting a review out early. He even emailed Intel to ask if it was okay, and they could have been against this early review. DeBauer could also buy one from Mind Factory if he wanted to, but of course don't break the NDA on the CPU direct from Intel. Yeah, so if DeBauer is complaining, maybe he should have just bought a CPU from Mind Factory. Then he can also review it just like Anitech. Anybody could have just bought it from Mind Factory. Now, technically, apparently Mind Factory only sells to German buyers or people from Germany. They don't ship overseas, so that is a problem. However, I think this isn't something that's going to happen all too often, because it looks like it was a mistake from Intel to give the go-ahead for Mind Factory to sell their CPUs. I don't think it's going to happen again. If it does, it's kind of like a one-off thing. So people making a big fuss about this, I would say that this is probably not that big of a, well, I don't think it's something that's going to recur all the time. So it's like, you don't have to make a specific rule for this unless it's something that occurs a lot. I think that is about it. I think that's about all I wanted to say about the 11700K. I would say that people should just wait and see on the 30th, because CapFrame X has reservations about these the Rocket Lake CPUs performing on the old BIOS, fair. But I would also say, you know, Catframe X, if you have a problem with Ian's review numbers, well, why don't you just go ahead and do some benchmarks and do a review? You can put that out, you can put that anywhere. I'm sure people who are following the situation will be more than happy, even if you put it up as a Google Docs document or Excel document. Yeah, I think, you know, you can do that if you want to respond to the fact that it doesn't have the latest BIOS. Okay, so I think that's all of the information that I had today, or all of the articles that I want to talk about. So we're going to go to a short 2-minute break, and then I will come back, and then we'll have like a bit of an after show. We can, I don't know, there's not that many people there, but Stephen is there, so we can have a bit of a chat. Okay, so I don't know if you can all hear me. Turn the sound or turn the volume off. Okay, we'll just keep going. If you can't hear me, let me know in the comments below. But this is basically the after show. I'm just going to put up the AMD Where Gaming Begins highlight reel. I don't know if you guys watched it, but I will just leave it up there, and I guess we can just chat, because I also wanted to touch on the RX 6700 XT again. And I think if there's nobody there, well, this is a kind of good time to, you know, spend 10 minutes to talk about it. So yes, so in the after show we get to the chat and comments. So hello Yurizo and Stephen Hart, hello. I'm good. How are you? And I haven't played Valheim. I saw it on Steam. I probably don't have the time to play it. But it looks like very much a game where I think people who like Fortnite are going to quite like this a lot. It has that base building element, it has the crafting elements, and it runs on pretty similar hardware to Fortnite and those type of games. So Stephen Hart writes, my Strix 3080 has made 1910 in the first 32 hours mining. I should have started months ago, and my office is warm too. Definitely need aircon in summer. Okay, so maybe that's why I have got a lot of comments in my other videos, the 3090 video. People are saying, oh look, 90 degrees, it's fine. 100 degrees is fine. So it really all depends on what your tolerance level is of the temperatures. Because after all, if you buy a car, how hot do you want to run it, right? If you buy, you don't know. Like if the meter on the thing, the thermometer or whatever you call it inside the car, and it's telling you that the car is hot, well, do you keep going? Do you stop? It depends on everybody's tolerance. Maybe some people don't want to run it too high to the top of that bar. Maybe some people only want to run it at 75%, anymore they want to cool the car down. So this is the same sort of thing. Do you want to run it at 100 degrees or 80 degrees, 90 degrees? I think personally for me, it makes more sense to run it at around 80 degrees when I have the aircon on. So I don't know if you guys know, but I live in Malaysia. It's, on the equator basically, very hot all the time, very humid as well. It's 30 degrees every day here. And then if I'm on the second level, second level, 2 floors up. So ground floor, first floor, second floor. My room is on the second floor, and so it can get very hot. There's no real insulation. It's all windows. So it's 35 degrees. Then the room will probably also be 35, maybe even more. And so with aircon on, I can get about 25 degrees. I don't want to get cooler too much more than that because it's a waste of electricity. So it's a full 10 degrees lower. So I think it doesn't, if I'm running at 25 degrees ambient and the card is reaching 80 degrees, well, maybe with 35 degrees room temperature, then the GPU is now at about 90 degrees. So I kind of really don't want to go any higher than around 80, 82. 84, I guess, would be okay. But if you go 84 degrees in a 25 degree room, maybe a 35 degree room would be 95 degrees. And that's something I don't want to run 24 hours, 7 days a week. Because that's what you have to do with mining. You're running it for, the life of the card. 4 or 5 years of the card, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And what you also want to do really is underclock the card or undervolt the card so you're not using as much energy. And I think miners are acutely aware of exactly how much energy that they're actually using, because I just typed it up. I just searched on Google and I said, well, how much does a fridge actually use up in terms of energy? It uses 100 watts to 250 watts. Your average person's fridge uses about 100 watts to 200. So that's kind of like a graphics card. Excuse me. Hang on. Okay, so where was I? So I think, do you want to buy a 250 watt fridge, or do you want to buy a 100 watt fridge and buy a graphics card that does 150 watt? They would be exactly the same things in terms of the amount of power that you use. And say, for example, a 3070, every single miner knows you don't run it at you don't run it at 220 watts, which is its intended power usage. you underclock the card and you run at 130 watts. And it's not just the cost saving, because now you're only really saving like maybe about 10 cents a day, but the heat that it generates, something that you have to do over multiple cards. I think miners, I know this is, some people might think I'm crazy for saying this, but miners are acutely aware of the environmental issues that go into the amount of mining that they do. And I think a lot of miners are okay with they've I guess calculated it already, and they decided that the benefits are more than enough to justify the amount of power that they use. I don't know, I think I put it pretty clear, like if you're barely using that much power, then why would you not gain like the $8 or $10 that you can make from a card each day? And as you can see with Stephen Hart, his 3080, $19.10 in the first 32 hours mining, multiply that out by a year. Like, why wouldn't you want to create that wealth? Maybe you don't need it, then don't mine. But there are obviously people out there that need this money. I don't think we can begrudge people of actually using their card, understanding the environmental issues at play, and also mining to create some wealth. I'm not trying to just justify my position. I'm talking about imagine all of the gamers out there who are struggling to buy this GPU. Well, now they can buy this GPU, and they can make some money from it, and they can be happy about the purchase that they made. So yeah, I'm sure everybody thinks about like, well, why didn't I start mining sooner? Why didn't we start back in 2018 in the first mining run up? Well, I would say everything happens for a reason, because now you know the full effects of mining and how it's going to play out. I don't think it's such a bad idea to have all of this information right now at this moment in time, knowing what's had happened in the past. And of course, you didn't hit a lucky by buying Bitcoin when it was $1 and now it's $50,000. That wasn't you. That didn't happen. But that's okay, because you could have also been the guy who bought at $50,000 and now it's going to tank back to like $1. I mean, that could also be, that's a lot of people out there. So I don't think it's too bad. I don't think we missed any opportunity. I think this time right now is as good as any. Even with Ethereum apparently moving to proof of stake, where it might cut out a lot of miners and the GPU resources needed, because apparently you need something like 32 Ethereum or something like that to be part of proof of stake. I think even with, say, like a 9-month window to the end of the year, or maybe till the end of next year, if that is all the Ethereum that we can mine, that's still a lot of time for somebody to go and buy a graphics card right now, and then mine for the year and 9 months that they can mine, switch over to something else like Ravencoin or Litecoin, and then and even if you make like a couple of $100 bucks, I don't think that's such a bad thing. So yeah, I don't think it's that bad of an idea to mine right now. That said, I do want to talk about some of the pricing that is out there. So I don't think people should think about this in a way like, well, whatever the price is for these GPUs, well, I'm just going to pay for it because I'm going to get my money back anyway. Because I think there is this return on investment that a lot of miners talk about, and right now it is really, really high. Like, there was a point where it was around 4 or 5 months where you could get your money back, and now it's more like 8 months. So I don't really know if it's really worth it if it's at 10 months. 10 months is a long time because that's assuming that things stay the same as it is now. So if Bitcoin stays at $50,000, if Ethereum stays at $1,800, if you're going to go and buy a GPU, you have to think about what's going to happen if this price tanks. So think of a tolerance level that you're comfortable with. Say, for example, if you're happy with Ethereum or Bitcoin being like $20,000, or Ethereum being $1,000, for example, or even $500, then work out backwards like what the return on investment would be if Ethereum is $500, because that would be the amount of money that you make per day would be like 3 times lower, for example. So if it's 3 times longer and it takes you 8 months, well, it's going to take you 24 months to get your money back. There's 2 years. You'd have to mine continuously for 2 years to get your money back. 2 years is a long time for people to think about it. I would say think about a return on investment of around about 6 months. And right now, the GPUs are very expensive. You have the 3060 in my area going for $1,000 US, and I think that's too expensive. Yeah, that's really expensive, especially when your hash rate has been cut in half as well. And that's the thing. Like, people thought, well, if you cut the hash rate, then the price will lower. Well, a lot of other things have to happen as well. Like miners have to stop buying them. Miners are still buying them. Miners are still buying them for Ravencoin. They're getting full hash rate for Ravencoin. And at some point, if Ethereum continues to go up, well, 20 mega hash a second isn't that bad for $1,000. So for NVIDIA to cut their hash rate, well, most of it is really just a ploy. A lot of people didn't like my RTX 30 video where I said it was anti-consumer. I still think it is anti-consumer to cut something out of your card. Like, let's not forget that's what's going on. Like, NVIDIA decided to take this part out of their card and decided to put it into another card. Take a feature out, put it into another card. It's like if they took out, say, I don't know, like I said the other time, the CAD capabilities of the card and put it into another card, and now they're going to charge you 3 times more. So I don't think that's a good idea. In general, for consumers, like, no consumer should go, hey, look, they're going to cut out the hash rate out of this so I can buy it. Well, you can't buy it anyway, because the 3060 is $1,000. It's not $329. It's $1,000. It's 3 times more than it's supposed to be. Gamers are buying this at $1,000. They don't care about the hash rate. They want a new graphics card. And the other thing I want to say is, like, the 3060 is not like you're getting 50% or 70% better performance than a 2060. Like we've seen in the past, like the Pascal cards and the, well, yeah, Maxwell cards, but maybe not the Turing cards. The Pascal cards got like 50 to 70% better than their previous generation. You're not getting that with this Ampere 3060. They essentially cut exactly the same die. So technically, you could buy the RTX 2060 if the RTX 2060 is cheaper. Yes, you're getting a 6 gig card, but if it's like $1,000 well, sorry, if it's like $500 cheaper, if you can buy the RTX 2060 for $500, maybe that's something that you want to think about. In fact, the RTX 2060 would have better hash rate than the RTX 3060. So I think, I think the RTX 3060 is not very good value for most people. So OpticGamer37 says, hi everyone, hello, how you going? I hope you're still around. There's only 2 viewers. That's okay. I don't really care how many viewers I get. I actually think the stream is better this week than it was last week, trying to improve it. So hopefully it'll continue to get better, and maybe viewers will come later on. Not too fast at the moment, but I hope you're doing well, OpticGamer, and thank you for joining the stream as always. The Rostam says, is it me or does the boost on still look good? Are you talking about the Radeon boost that was actually on just before? I think the Radeon boost really only boosts the FPS at some point. I've only really seen it just then, so I don't know too much about it. I've watched the AMD show last night, but the Radeon boost really just boosts the FPS. I'm just thinking about the day where all of these cars are just sitting in bulk on a store shelf. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if that's going to happen because Nvidia is probably always going to keep stock. They're going to manage the stock levels. So, okay, here's something else that, have you guys watched Blood Diamond? So in Blood Diamond, the Leo DiCaprio movie, so the diamond companies manage the stock levels of the diamonds to keep the prices high. And so technically Nvidia, why wouldn't they also do this? They did it for the Turing series. At least that's what it felt like. Well, maybe they didn't have to do anything because it just kept selling out. But they could probably learn from that experience that they don't have to. They can manage the stock levels to keep the price high, and so I don't think we're really going to see them on shelves. Yeah, I just don't, unless of course. If they get into a price war with AMD, which probably won't happen because AMD is still selling out as well. Now, funny thing is, Intel is going through this situation where everybody wants AMD CPUs. Well, so we'll see if how Intel sells in the next month or so with their new Rocket Lake series. I think a lot of people actually bought Comet Lake. Even though you're sure, okay, if we're talking the general population, yeah, more people bought AMD for sure. But if you're going to present 2 CPUs to somebody, and then one is out of stock, and one is like twice the price, which AMD is, and then Intel is available, well, I don't think people are going to wait all that long to go and buy the one that's available, especially if it's a reasonable price that is closer to MSRP. I love that movie. I think it's one of Leonardo DiCaprio's best performances. And it's a really fun movie to watch. I need to go back and watch it sometime. So the reason I referenced that movie is because I actually went to Belgium to buy my wife the diamond ring because I figured, okay, I can get 20% off with the VAT. And I wanted to go to the source and pick the best range of diamonds that were available. If I just buy them locally, I won't get that range. So go to where the stock is the highest. And then we got a holiday out of it as well. So I think she remembers that, you know, like, so I'm happy about doing that. Okay, so got this Gamers Nexus review. I don't even know why I got this Gamers Nexus. It just came up, but I'll leave it playing there. Gamers Nexus has done really well for themselves. And I wouldn't like to work at Gamers Nexus, to be frank. I would not like to work there. They work like machines. They probably work 18 hours a day. They all love what they do. I don't think I could work 18 hours. You'd have to be not married, no kids, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how they can put out a 30-minute video every day. It takes a long time to edit one 10-minute video. That's all I'll say. Rostam says, relatively speaking, which place do you think has the most stock for GPUs? Okay, well, you're going to have to specify what you mean by most place. Is that like country, or do you think it's like a retailer? Which place do you think has the most stock for GPUs? Well, obviously, NVIDIA is going to supply the US first. I think they would do that because it would sell out straight away. The US has the most purchasing power. It has the best run sort of distribution network. It has far fewer people that you have to deal with, far fewer laws in terms of, say like you go to Europe, there's like 30 countries there, and then you have to deal with every single one of them. So the US is just way easier to deal with on that respect per capita or per number of people. I think US probably has a lot of cards. And, you know, if you look on the Steam hardware survey, the Ampere is not doing actually that bad. I think I showed that last time. I don't know how I will be able to get the result again. But I think it was something like it's going to overtake Turing in the next couple of months. It was something like 0.8% for 3080s. And then the 2080 was like 1.2% of hardware owned, something like that. So it's going to overtake Turing really soon in the next couple of months in terms of ownership. And then it'll be really hard for gamers to justify, hey, NVIDIA is not getting us any cards. There are cards. People are just paying ridiculous amounts of money for them. But yeah, I think the US has a lot of stock. I think, it's really hard to say. There's nobody's really got that much stock. Like, if I look online on my retailer, we have these big online retailers, a little bit like Amazon, but just for third parties. A little bit more like AliExpress, I would say, where I am in Malaysia. And so these online retailers these shops, they have these online storefronts, and then they'll put up their cards. And the 3060 is like $1,000, and the 3070 is $1,500, which is insane. I complained about the 3070 when it was $750 when I bought it for $750, and now that's looking like a ridiculous deal. And that was 2 months ago. That was in January. And that was pretty much the last card that was available for that price. And then there was like a 2-week break, and then they came back, and it was $1,000. So it's totally insane. But if people are buying them, then the retailers are going to keep putting it up at that price. Okay, so UpToGamer37 says, what games are you playing on PS4? Okay, so I have a PS4. I don't have a PS5. Are you talking about PS4 or PS5? I think PS4, the last game I played would have been Diablo, what's that one called? Hell Edition or something? But Diablo 3, I played that with the kids, and they really like it. I would say that the console experience for Diablo 3 is really different to the PC experience. The PC experience is much better. The console experience feels like hack and slash. Plus, you have to wait for people to go into the inventory to manage their characters and adjust their skills and stats and stuff. So there's a lot of downtime in Diablo 3. But it's still fun. I mean, like, you're just playing with the kids, right? Like, it doesn't really matter that much. You're kind of just helping them along. They like it as well. I got it for the Switch as well. So I have Diablo 3 for 3 platforms. And I beat it on the PC. Both that and the expansion. I don't think I ever beat the Diablo 2 expansion. That's the only one I haven't beaten. What games? Well, I will say I don't know if Yakuza Like a Dragon counts because I'm playing that on PC, but it's available on PS4. And since November, I've been trying to finish it. I think it's 4 months now, and it's taking too long. This channel takes up a lot of time. I think people don't know how long the channel takes, which is one good thing about live streaming because I don't have to edit the damn video. But later on, I might like cut out clips, kind of like what Tech Deals is doing. I don't know if you guys watch Tech Deals because I think he's quite entertaining. But he likes to do a long 3-hour stream. I don't want to do that long, but he cuts out certain segments, and he basically does it like he's filming it, which is cool because like he gets a lot of people in the chat, and he's really entertaining. He's a good presenter. I hope one day I can be as good as him. Rostam says, during these times, patience is a virtue. Yeah, it's hard, I think. For example, if I didn't make that decision to buy the 3070 in January, I don't think I would have bought. I also got a 3080 as well, but I bought that for $1,500, and that was really expensive. I think $1,500 is probably the borderline. I don't think most people should be buying a 3080. Well, now that I've tested it, right? Because it's got G6X, because you have to babysit the card quite a bit, I think the 3080 is not really worth it. I think the 3070 is a better card than the 3080 for general use. For like 90% of the people out there who don't really care about, say, like 180 or 200 frames a second, you're happy with 100 FPS, 60 FPS in Cyberpunk 2077, turn a few things down for those top games. 3070 is more than enough. Don't forget the 3070 is like a 2080 Ti, which is the top of the card from last generation. I think the 3070 is going to suit most people for at least a couple of years. I mean, but that's assuming that the card was $750 or even MSRP $500. Of course, at $500, it was a good deal. The 8 gigabytes was probably a bit of a nuisance. It still is. That is really the only downfall of the 3070, the 8 gigabytes of RAM. Which brings me to my next point, which is the RX 6700 XT, which is why I put that AMD video to begin with. I think the RX 6700 XT is the best card that's going to be released. The only problem I have, obviously, is that the memory bus is 192 bits. We'll have to see how that plays out. So I don't know if they have the specs on here. Maybe I just pause it if they have the specs. Here we go. Maybe they've got their own chart, I think. Okay. So the RX 6700 XT, the game clock is 2424 megahertz. And I don't know if you've seen some of my previous videos where I talked about the RX 6700 XT. I was quite conservative with that because I said that it was going to have about 2200 megahertz because we didn't know what the clock rate was going to be until they revealed it at the AMD show. So I was very conservative with 2200, and if it was 2200, that obviously translates to a 3060 Ti level of performance. And the 2400, that would be 10% faster, theoretically speaking, if that frequency translates to performance. Usually it does, unless you're clocking it so high that it doesn't translate into performance anymore. Then this is basically a 3070. This is basically a 3070. People will see this as a 30. Plus, it has 12 gigabytes of memory. The only issue is the memory bus is lower than the 3070. The 3070 has a higher memory bus of 256 bits. This is 192 bits. I think that maybe that 192 bit is a bit low. I mean, that's at the level of the 3060. So actually, you know, this could have been an amazing card. RX 6700 XT with 256-bit bus, with the full infinity cache, with 16 gigabytes of memory. That's what they should have done. So they missed the trick there, I think. However, having said that, let's see what the performance turns out like. If it's like 3 or 4% difference in terms of the FPS compared to a 3070, that's good. I would get this. I would get the RX 6700 XT. You have 12 gigabytes of memory, so you don't have to worry so much about it having only 8 gigabytes. And I think the 12 gigabytes, I think 12 gigabytes is probably the right amount for this 1440p card for most people. And so, as I said at the start of the video, or the start of the live stream, I said that I'm trying to make some videos right now to test the 3090. And one of the videos that I'm doing is I'm downloading some mods for Skyrim to see if I can max out the VRAM, to see if that has an impact on the temperatures for the 3090 VRAM. So unless you're actually modding and you want to put tons and tons of mods on, the 12 gigabytes for most games should be enough, I think. As long as you're not at the bottom end of the amount of VRAM, I think that's the issue. Because you remember like the Pascal cards where you had the 1060s, the 1060, for example, had 3 gigabytes and 6 gigabytes, and 3 gigabytes was clearly not enough, so you buy the 6 gigabytes. But then if you compared that to the rest of the stack, you had the 1070 with 8 gigabytes, the 1080, 8 gigabytes, 1080 Ti 11. So obviously 3 gigabytes is down the bottom of that. And so that's not really a card that's going to last very long. So you want to avoid the bottom of the stack. And it looks like the 3070 with its 8 gigabytes is probably the next on the chopping block. So the 3070 is a great card. The only problem is that it has 8 gigabytes. I think the RX 6700 XT with 12 gigabytes is much better. I think long-term wise, got to see how it performs in terms of their memory bus speed, and if that has an impact on the actual performance. I think that is one of the reasons why we have a streaming processor of 2005. We have a frequency of 2424 to try and pick up that little bit of lost speed from that memory capacity. I don't know if it quite works like that because there are a lot of bottlenecks and stuff. But if it can increase the speed in some areas, maybe it can help drag the other areas out. And plus, it's also got that 96 megabytes of infinity cache that would also help it out a little bit, that 192-bit memory bus. The Rostam says, I'm loving the advancement of these GPUs nevertheless. Yeah, definitely. Make sure to check out my other video on NVIDIA's 40 series card, which will be the Lovelace GPUs. And it's a rather long video. It's 18 minutes long. But I think in that video, we also talk about the manufacturing process of these GPUs and how going to smaller nodes, so right now we're on 7 nanometer, and the NVIDIA cards are on 8 nanometer Samsung, which is also 10 nanometer. Well, it's a derivative of the Samsung 10 nanometer. And how when we shrink those, we can get more performance. And that's clearly how we're going to get generation jumps. I don't know if architecture helps as much anymore. The architecture might help like 10 or 20% if it's lagging behind. But I think most of the performance is coming from these manufacturing processes when we jump from 7 nanometer to what looks like it's going to be 5 nanometer next time. And I think NVIDIA will go to, well, whatever the Samsung, I think it'll probably be like Samsung 6 nanometer. Which will be a derivative of the Samsung 7 nanometer. And so I think I've pretty much gone on for as long as I needed to. I've talked about the RX 6700 XT. I don't think there are any other things that I have that I wanted to talk about. If you have anything else, make sure to say something in the comments in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Otherwise, we're gonna end it there. The stream has gone for 2.5 hours. I've seen the video and it's awesome. Thanks. I assume you're talking about the Lovelace video. So yeah, the stream has gone on for 2.5 hours, and it's probably time for lunch. It's 1:30 where I am, and I think that's probably going to do it for this week. I will try and do live streams. I'm trying to hit 10 o'clock my time, which will be 1 hour earlier than today. Today was 11 o'clock. And I don't know what the time would be in US in the East or the West Coast, but it'll probably be like, you know, like on the East Coast, it might be like 9 o'clock or something like that. But I think I'm trying to hit 10 o'clock, which is 1 hour earlier than today, regularly. I'm still trying to make it a regular occurrence, so hopefully my wife doesn't have too much of an issue with me coming on Thursdays to do a live stream here. I am supposed to be at work, but I can do this, and then I can do my work otherwise. Okay, so I think that's gonna do it. And as I said before, there'll be some other content coming out. So that I'm trying to get a Skyrim video out, and also I'm going to try and do a video of the 3090 with how much effect the heat sinks will have on top of the card, and also fans and stuff on that. So I think that will be a pretty interesting video. So look forward to that. Okay, so that's going to do it for this one. And remember, if you like this video, make sure to click the like button. Also to subscribe to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.